This is Neil deGrasse Tyson, your personal astrophysicist, and right now you are watching, and possibly only just listening to, The Hole.
Welcome to The Hole. I am Rob Sprans.
I'm Franco Del Valle.
I'm Laura Levine.
I am honored to be joined by Isiah Whitlock Jr. How you doing, Isiah?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
You've got a lot of stuff going on these days. I've been watching you. I've been following you since The Wire, and even before then, you've been on Chappelle's show and been popping up on a lot of things. But as of late, I'm watching Your Honor, great show, and you're on it. The Five Bloods, just fantastic film I want to talk about. Just so much. So I'm really excited to talk to you.
Great.
So I want to, before we get into all of this, just looking at your IMDb page, there are just so many things that you've been a part of. And I say this all the time when I interview people, and it's so true, is that some people think that once they start, getting some roles, that it just came out of nowhere, that they didn't just, that they weren't working for it. You know what I mean? But you can tell, like, since at a young age, you were going at it from the very beginning.
Yeah, I pretty much started right away when I got to New York City. The first couple of years were kind of rough. Had a really tough time getting myself established and started. But in some ways, I kind of enjoyed it. I just thought, this is the way it's supposed to be. You got to be out here hustling. And back then, I think the telephone was a dime. And I would get myself a roll of dimes, and I would just start talking, calling people, and that kind of slowed down when it went up to a quarter.
I remember the dime, which is, fortunately, I remember.
It doesn't seem like it was that far back, but I would give myself a roll of dimes and just start calling people and making the rounds. But early on, it was kind of rough, but I stuck with it, and here I am.
So you grew up in Indiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just decide one day you're gonna. Obviously, there's not a lot of acting work in Indiana, or not nearly as much as in New York. But so you just decide one day that you're gonna move there, or did you go there for a little while to feel it out?
No. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, but I went to college in Minnesota at a place called Southwest State University, and I was a football player at the time. And I got banged up quite a bit. Had a couple of concussions, broken ankle.
Yeah.
And, you sort of get to that point where you have that talk with yourself of, what the hell are you doing? I wasn't going to play pro football or anything like that. So it didn't make sense to me anymore. So I had to find something else to do. So I started, I went out, I auditioned for a play at the college, The Crucible. I was terrible. I had one line.
So you had one line and you were terrible?
Yes.
How many times did you practice that one?
I think it was like maybe 2-3 hours a day.
So, how is it terrible? Did you just flub the line, or did you get nervous?
No, it was the line was, we had to go to the house. I played the jailer, and I had this huge ring of keys, and we had to go to the house. And I said, my line was supposed to be, "Come on, John, come on out of the house. We're here to arrest you." And I said, "Come on, John. Come on, John. Come on, John. Come on, John."
After practicing, it sounds like nerves to me.
This went on for hours. One line. And I have to say, I was honored to be able to work with Arthur Miller years later and tell him that story.
Oh, cool.
And the look on his face was like horror. because I was so excited to say, first play I ever did was yours. I was in your play, and I had this line, and it was, "Come on, John," and I rehearsed it, and I started doing the different ways, and Arthur Miller just kind of stared at me like, "What the hell? Get this guy out of here."
Get away from me. So did you take drama classes and acting classes too as part of that?
I did, and I made a real serious effort with plays and literature and things like that. So by the time I left Southwest State, I was pretty much on my way. They had a very, very good drama program for being out on the plains, but they were really, really good, and they kind of prepared me for when I went to San Francisco, and I studied with the American Conservatory Theater, and I studied there, and then I was part of their company for about 3-4 years, and then after that is when I came to New York. So I had quite a history before I had even come to New York. But what San Francisco did and the American Conservatory Theater did was it gave me a very, very solid foundation. So it was really kind of hard to throw things at me that I wasn't familiar with and somewhat skilled in, especially, some of the classics like Shakespeare, Chekhov, restoration type plays. So I really had a bit of a knowledge, but what I realized when I got to New York, nobody really cared too much about that coming out of me. What they wanted to see was the grit, which I did have, but there weren't very many roles for African Americans back then. I mean, they didn't have all the streaming and everything like that. So, but again, I stuck with it, ate a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and Slim Jims, and here I am.
So what's the first role you get that kind of gets people? Because I'm sure you do bit parts. I did extra work a long time ago, and it's straight up brutal. Like I think we got paid $50, and you got to be there 4 a.m. They bus you in, and you just basically wait for hours and hours and hours, and then they have you walk by for 2 minutes, and then it's done.
Yeah.
So having that, did you have to kind of go backwards to go forwards and do something like that as well?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I did a little extra work when I first got here just to make a little money, pay some bills and things like that. I'm not ashamed to admit that. And then the talk of the town was first I was hanging around the Actors Studio, and they were having a reading at Paul Newman's apartment for a play called The Color of Money, and Paul Newman was trying to get some people together to do this reading. So I show up at Paul Newman's apartment, and there's Tom Cruise and Martin Scorsese and
wow,
sitting there, and of course I wanted a part in the play. I mean, not play, but in the movie that I didn't get. They cast Forrest Whitaker, fine actor. But then later, the talk of the town was this movie called Wise Guy. They're going to do this movie called Wise Guy, which they later changed to Goodfellas.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I got an audition for Goodfellas. And I went in, and the part that I auditioned for was, if you're familiar with the movie, is when Pesci hits the guy over the head with the bottle in the club because he embarrasses him with the check. That's what I had auditioned for.
Okay.
And I thought, well, they're never going to cast me in this. But, when you're just starting out, you go out for everything,
Yeah.
So when I went in to meet Martin Scorsese, he said, I know you from somewhere. You look so familiar. And I said, well, I did those readings for you over at Paul Newman's apartment. I mean, and he said, oh, yeah, right. He said, look, obviously you can't play the part that you auditioned for, but I have this part as a doctor where Henry comes in, he's all coked up and everything like that. And the only one he trusts is this doctor. And the doctor gives him the Valium and everything like that. And he says, do you think you could do that for me? I just said, I know it's small and, it's not very much, but if you could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. And I said, inside, I said, okay, I said, act like you've been there.
You know what? I could do you a favor, Mark.
I said, yeah, sure, Marty. I mean, it's, look, it's all about the work, Marty. I mean, it's no big deal, I think I could do that. And I think when I walked out of the room, I screamed. I just couldn't believe it.
Sure.
And I went back to my waiter job, and I told everybody. And there was one guy there, and he said, "You're kidding me." I said, "No. Martin Scorsese said I have a part in Goodfellas." And he said, "I'm going down there tomorrow." He said, "Because if you got a part, I know I'm going to get a part."
Oh, please.
It was like, they must just be handing out parts to people.
Right. And even before Goodfellas, I mean, Scorsese was still a legend even before that. So yeah, that's a great one, man. What a great one to start. So were you nervous going on set with them, or at that point were you already in pretty much of a groove that?
No, I wasn't too nervous. I mean, when I got there, there were no lines or anything like that. So I had to improvise with Ray Liotta a little bit of dialogue. But it was good. I mean, it gave me a real nice idea as to, movies and how they're done and things like that. And what better way to start than working with Martin Scorsese, and he was so specific about the different shots and things like that. So I thought, well, this is great. I didn't know the movie was going to turn out the way it did. But I was honored, to be a part of it. And, looking back, I'm a made guy now.
Yeah, you absolutely are.
Did you have an agent at that time?
No, I didn't. It was those dimes that I was making all those calls. And,
See, that's what I mean. There's always so much hard work behind it. And, it's funny because a lot of the backstories on people we've talked to, they do a soap opera. You do Goodfellas, so that's a nice way to get in for sure. Because especially like next time you go to anybody, you're like, I'm in Goodfellas, But
at the time it was called Wise Guy.
Oh,
and
okay.
I heard, they changed the name to Goodfellas, and I thought, oh, Goodfellas. Was it like some little buddy flick or something? I mean, that's silly. That's stupid. I mean, but I can't tell them that because I haven't done a movie. And so.
So did you go to see it in the theater?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was riveted,
Yeah.
Until they got to me. And then, then after my little scene, they finished the movie, but it turned out to be a great film.
Yeah, it certainly did. And, let's talk about great films for a minute. And you mentioned streaming and how that's opened up a lot of possibilities. So I want to talk about The Five Bloods, which is on Netflix right now. It went right to Netflix. It's a Spike Lee joint. To me, Spike is one of my favorite directors, filmmakers, for the longest time because, his movies, they send a message at the same time that they entertain you. And it's consistent. And I know you're in a few of his, but I want to start with The Five Bloods because it's a great role for you, especially. You're a prime part of that. And I was actually very impressed the way he did it, where even the flashbacks, he used the same actors to play the flashbacks, even though they were technically younger. It was a very cool way to do that. So how did you get involved with this film, and more importantly with Spike in general?
Well, this was like the sixth film that I had done for Spike. I think the first one I did was The 25th Hour.
Probably one of my favorites out of the bunch.
Yeah, and that I had gone into audition with Spike, and he had come to see a play that I was doing down in this 50-seat house in Tribeca. And he had heard about it, so he had come to see it. and he called me in about a week later to audition for the 25th Hour, and he liked what I did, and that's how that relationship started. And
then he just calls you whenever he has another film,
uh,
pretty much
not
five times.
not every film, but it's been usually it's like a bit of a cameo that I would come in and do my famous catchphrase, so to speak, which started in the 25th Hour.
Right. And that scene, by the way, that's not a cameo type of scene. That scene between you and Edward Norton is a fantastic scene, full of tension, and Edward Norton's just a fantastic actor as well.
Yeah.
So that that's no cameo in that film.
I'm not saying that was a cameo, but after that, if Spike didn't say have something for me to do, I always I would show up and do some characters, something like that. But it wasn't like a big lead, say like 25th Hour or The Five Bloods.
Right.
Say. Yeah.
So did you? So I wanted to look this up, but I'd rather ask the questions. Was this actually? Where was this shot? Because it did look like the Vietnamese jungle.
We were in Thailand, in the jungle.
Thailand. Oh, okay.
In Thailand, and it was downright painful. It worked to me. You got to the point where the heat, the elements, the mosquitoes, the flies, and things like that, you just couldn't get away from them. And it sort of gave you a bit of a feeling. I'm not going to say it was just like it, but it gave you that feeling of what it must have been like when these soldiers were there. And then you sort of got to that point where the reality of it all just kicked in, and we were just there living it, and just kind of holding on to one another to get through it. And we all sort of bonded in that way. We had a real nice camaraderie, and we just kind of stuck together. We were the Five Bloods running through the jungle in Thailand. And then we went to Vietnam and we shot for about 2 weeks. And that was quite wonderful also.
And yeah, so there's that, Spike has this way of getting these shots that, just stay with you. And the one that, when you mentioned going to Vietnam, I assume it's when you were in Ho Chi Minh City. Mm-hmm. There's that scene in the club with the four of you dancing and moving forward. Mm-hmm. It's just like such a cool image. He does that a lot with the, with the characters moving and everything else just kind of standing still. And your part
that was a very fun day.
It looked like you guys were really drunk.
It was a fun day.
Yeah. So what do you have, like you're in the jungle is just tents in the jungle, or do you have like do you go back and forth to a hotel every day? Or because it really did, you're right, it looked uncomfortable, man. It really did look hot.
Yeah, there were a couple of pictures where I looked at myself and I thought, oh my God, the sweat was just running off of me, and I just looked nasty and gross, and I thought, well, you definitely got that shot because I was feeling terrible, I was looking terrible, and yet I had to keep going. But we had hotels, but we had to travel, I would say, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour into the jungle to the location. And once you got there, even though you had the trailers and things like that, once you were on set, it seemed like there was just no relief.
Yeah.
From the elements, and everybody was feeling it. The beautiful thing about it is that it added so much to the film. It was like, we're not here sort of like jacking around or, acting like we're in the jungle. We were in the jungle and we were living it. And I think Spike got some great performances out of people.
I agree. Yourself, Delroy Lindo is phenomenal in that as well. But
Chadwick.
yeah,
of
that's,
course.
that's the next thing. We have to touch on that as well. So it was, I think, the second to last movie that Chadwick was in, and before he passed. And sometimes you don't know a lot about an actor, unfortunately, until something horrible like that happens. And I learned so much more about him after the fact, and how much he helped the community, and how much he gave of himself. Was anyone aware that he was sick during it? Did he really just keep it all to himself?
He kept it all to himself. Nobody really knew. I mean, when you look back on it, you say, "Oh yeah, okay, I can see, this or whatever." But he pretty much kept it all to himself. We just all thought he was being, this, big movie star type guy. But in hindsight, he was so kind, and to know that that's what he was struggling with. There was such a loneliness about it all that I'm glad we didn't know. It would have sort of changed a few things, in as far as approach. But it wasn't like, I mean, we were sort of trying to keep up with him, so it was great. We just persevered on.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think if you do know, you treat him differently, or maybe you don't, not even consciously, but maybe, and that's, I would assume that's just not what he wanted. So no one knew until he passed, or did you guys get word a little beforehand, or just no one knew until he passed?
Nobody knew until he passed. I did notice that he had lost quite a bit of weight, and in show business, you think you're losing weight for some reason or another. You've got something coming up, but we just carried on, and he came right in and joined us, and did what he had to do and everything like that. He was the leader at that time of the Five Bloods, so we all circled around him. But I was shocked when I heard the news. It was very, very sad. I was stunned. I didn't quite know what to say.
Sure. It seemed like there were multiple films that he was doing while he was fighting that, and
like Isaiah was saying, I don't know when Five Bloods was filmed, but I've been in Cambodia for a good amount of time in April, and it is unbearable, the heat, the humidity, and to think that Chadwick was sick and acting and performing on probably so many drugs. It's really impressive how much he gave.
Mm-hmm.
And I was out there sucking wind, and I wasn't sick or anything.
Well,
wasn't a damn thing wrong with me. I was just, trying to get through the day.
And that's a physical role too. That you weren't just hanging out in the jungle talking. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I don't want to ruin the movie or even the premise, because even that's a bit of a surprise. So, I'll just leave it at it's quite a physical role to be doing that in that heat, man.
The only fight we had was for the fan, because the mosquitoes can't fly through the fan, so it was like, and everybody runs for this one fan, it's in front of it. But like I said, we got through it, and it added so much to the film that you really believe we're in Vietnam, and dealing with the conditions and the elements.
Yep. Yeah, it was excellent. So now I want to move on to a couple other things, if you don't mind. Your Honor, which is currently on Showtime, another show that you're in, which at the moment they're saying it's a limited series. I am all in on this, although I am one episode back. So if you just killed everybody last week or aliens, don't tell me. But that's another really, really good project that you've been part of. And you know, I love Bryan Cranston. Breaking Bad is one of my favorite shows as well. How'd you get involved with that one?
Well, I got back to New York. I was in New York for a few months, and that's when I got the call that they were going to be doing this this show called Your Honor down in New Orleans. And the minute they mentioned Bryan Cranston, I got very excited, you know, wanting to do it with Michael Stolberg, who I think is just a fantastic actor. Really wanted to work with him. Our paths had always crossed, but I got a chance to work with him, and I was just very excited about it. And also, when I read the part, it gave me the idea that I could try and do some different things, you know, that I've always sort of wanted to do. You know, create another character. And so that's what that was my attempt in Your Honor.
You can't get a climate break either. Now you go to New Orleans. Can you get anything in Hawaii?
No, I know anything in the Bahamas or something.
Right, I know. So right now, is it still a limited series, or you think there's a chance that they're going to expand upon it? So you know the end and we don't. So maybe maybe I shouldn't say anything else. But is there a possibility that it will continue, or is this just a one and done?
Gee, I don't know. I don't know. You know, would be nice, you know, but you know, look, they tell me limited series. That's all I'm thinking is limited series. You know, because when I get shot, I'm teasing.
Come on, Isaiah.
Nah.
Well, they're putting so much marketing behind it too. I live in Manhattan. There's ads for it on every subway, on every billboard. Yeah. They're really pushing it.
And so it's the first show that my family has like rallied behind. I mean, it's been fun. It's like I can reestablish my relationship with some brothers and sisters because they're watching the show. And they keep trying to get information out of me as to
what's going to happen next. Yeah. There's a lot of twists, and it is a heart rate. Bryan Cranston, for some reason lately, everything he's in is a heart pounder, man, between Breaking Bad and this one again. You know, you think you know where it's going to go, and there's one curveball after another. So it's been great. And, you know, congratulations on that too.
Thank you.
So we talked about you being in one of the greatest films of all time in Goodfellas. Mm-hmm. You are in one of the greatest television shows of all time, without a doubt, in The Wire. I mean, that's where most people know you from. And, you know, when I tell people that you're doing the show, you know what the first thing they say is, you know, Clay, she is the first thing we get. That show to me is without a doubt maybe number one, if not top five. It has to be. Mm-hmm. And you know, I love the way that they framed each season out. Each season had its own theme. You know, one was you know, more based on the streets itself. One was based on the law enforcement. One was based on the politics and, you know, and the media. And it was just so great the way it played out. To this day, you probably hear about The Wire more than anything else, I got to think.
Well, I mean, lately I've heard more about Your Honor, which is present, but I do hear a lot about The Wire. I mean, The Wire's been on for like over 10 years, and I'm still walking down the street, you know, people looking at me saying shit. You know. Make it stop! Oh, please make it stop!
So,
the weird part is when I'm like in Europe or something like that, and you hear it, you know,
with an accent.
yeah, you're at Cipriani's or something like that, and then Alberta, Canada. At least that's where he told me he was from, and I just kind of smiled at him and said,
And that came from your uncle, right? I read something about how you kind of took what your uncle would say.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of like a common phrase, but my uncle said it all the time. And it was weird. I mean, it was like, I remember one time he was trying to open up a bottle of whiskey and he couldn't get it open. And he had this huge smile on his face, and he said, "Oh, they don't want you to get it out of shit. It's part of the shit." And he got the bottle open. He said, "Yeah, I knew I was going to get it open. Shit." and it just went on and on. And so I thought, I got to use that someday.
Yeah.
I got the opportunity. But I first used it in Spike Lee's films. And then once I got onto The Wire, they started writing it in because it was a phrase that was sort of common. But, as my friend told me, nobody says it the way you say it. So
damn right. So when they wrote it, so they would write it in, did they use, I know you have a rule, it's 9 E's, correct? So if you spell
I came up with that. That was
So they wrote it like that in the script? Are there a bunch of like I's when they tried to write it, or does it just say shit and you just did it?
No, they would sort of, write it. There would just be a few E's. I don't think it was 9. I just figured if I got to live with it, I got to lay down some laws,
Right.
People saying it, because I heard some bad ones, So I thought, okay, this is the way the spellings going to be, people. 9 E's and that's it. But they would start writing it in, and you got to be a little careful with that because you don't want it to just be gratuitous. I mean, it's got to really come off of something. So if I felt that it wasn't, I just wouldn't do it. But if it really came off of something, like when my uncle was trying to open that bottle of whiskey, then I thought, okay, I could lay it in there.
Or corruption in South Baltimore.
Right.
Where tiny Korean girls are where am I gonna get the money from? So and then my family's from Tennessee and I grew up in Indiana, so you sort of put those two accents together and you get this weird thing up in your nose, and that's where it comes from.
Yeah, so now before you guys joined, Lori said that she was doing it around the house.
My family hates me, right?
And
Since you agreed to come on, Isiah, everyone I know just tells me to shut up already.
Right, but you also said that she does it terribly, and she's being told that she ruins it. So would you mind critiquing her
It's really bad. It's awful.
Sure.
Let's see it, Lori. Let's see what you got.
Okay, hold on. She. I kind of like sometimes Isiah doesn't put the T in, so I kind of let it go.
Here's what you got to do.
No, please.
Yeah. You gotta spread your lips sideways, like you going that way.
Yeah.
And then you got to try to get it up into your nose as much as you possibly can. It can't hang in the back of your throat. It can't hang.
It's hanging.
The fast area back here. It's got to get in there, and that's why you can do the sh until you feel it hit. And once you feel it hit, then you just
give them the E.
Right.
Well, the 9 E's, but yeah.
9 E's, right. Well, this is really my roundabout way of promoting that you're also in the history of swear words.
Yes.
For Netflix. Can you guess which swear word episode is your strong point? So in that episode, you do apparently a 56-minute world record sheet. Is that true or is that edited?
56 second.
56-second one. Okay.
Yeah, there's no way I could do it.
Yeah, that's a big.
But you also, you did like a 2.5-minute one with your hand in the water, right?
Yeah.
In the ice water.
Well, I put the hand in the water, and then I asked them. I said, what's the record? And they said, well, nobody's gone over like a minute or something like that. And I was like, well, why is my hand still in here for 2.5 minutes? I mean, you know.
Well, I also have to point out that you can get your own Isiah Whitlock Jr. bobblehead.
Yes.
And where do you get it? Of course, you get it at sheeeeeeeet.com with 9 E's.
Yes.
So you can get the bobblehead. It says a couple of different things on it. It's such a cool idea. And I love the promo that you did for it, where it had you and the actor who plays Marlo from The Wire. You tell me about your new product that you got.
Yeah, Jimmy. Yeah, right. he was kind enough to do that for me. But you know, we did a thing on Kickstarter to make the bobblehead. I really thought we were just going to do like 100, but when we did it on Kickstarter, we raised over $100,000.
Wow, that's great.
You know, but then it was like I had the money. Now I had to like find a place to do it. And I thought, you know, I could just do it like in Clay Davis style and take all of the money.
Just leave.
And say, well, you know, look, you should have known better. You knew who you were giving. You knew who you were giving. I mean, you know, you really didn't expect me to come up with a product. But we got them made. They're you know, and the quality on the bobblehead is really good. I mean, it's not like some cheap, you know, plastic thing. And there's 3 sayings on there, and it talks. I mean, you actually hear my voice, which is what I demand. I said, look, I'll do a bobblehead, but the bobblehead's got to talk. Otherwise, it just becomes another bobblehead.
Right.
But now that the bobblehead talks, it's nice.
If you would have did the clay and just built everybody, I bet you everybody would have been like, all right, respect. But no one would have been mad at that. I think you would have been the one person to pull off the Kickstarter scam.
They would have been honored to have been built by Clay Davis. Yes.
Isiah, you have masks too that say that, right? Face masks?
Yes. Face masks. I had some mugs at one time, but the bobblehead is the main
The
thing.
big one.
But you can get a face mask that says "she."
I saw someone wearing it and it says it.
It's appropriate for the times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know. So do you find it? Speaking of that, do you find any differences now in is Hollywood starting back up a little more with precautions, or like where do you see things going? You know, given that it's kind of like this mixed blessing, because now that things are going straight to streaming and theaters or straight to streaming, a lot more can get made, but at the same time that kind of movie theater vibe starts to go away. Do you think that this is going to become the norm, or do you feel like it's going to go back to how it used to be once, you know, everyone's vaccinated and hopefully
Oh, I'm so sorry.
she
Oh, right. He is right. I have the phone on mute too. I think it's gonna. I really think it's gonna go back to movie theaters. I think people are gonna be very. They're gonna miss that. I kind of missed not being able to see The Five Bloods on a big screen. I think that, to me, that's like a big screen.
hell yeah.
You know, and some of these other, you know, big blockbuster type movies, I don't think people are going to want to sit at home and just watch it on television. I think that's going to get old, and I think people are itching to get out. And I don't think it's going to, you know, totally go back to film because it is a lot easier just to sit at home and watch it. But I think it's going to maybe go about 50-50, I would imagine.
Yeah, if anything, maybe it does both, where not only does it go back to theaters, but now you have players that weren't in the movie game, such as Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, that make films that are for the theaters, because obviously the more money there is to go around to make projects, the more can be made, the more actors get work, and the trickle down happens.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's a mixed blessing, because you don't have to necessarily no longer rely on a major studio or indies. Now you have a new genre that can come in, or a new category.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like, from what I've heard, that people like Netflix kind of leave things alone a lot more than movie studios do.
Yeah, that I wouldn't. That I wouldn't know. That's. I mean, I'm not like a producer or something like that, but I think you might be right about that. You can definitely get a lot more things done with something like that, and for an actor, I mean, you love that. There's just more of an opportunity to do some things.
Mm-hmm. So next, coming up, you have a film called I Care a Lot, which is coming out on Netflix in February. I've seen the trailer and it looks really good. It's another. It definitely looks like it's got some twists and turns in that one too. So on that film, is there anything else you have coming up after that you're working on now, or is it shut down a little bit for a while?
No, everything is pretty much shut down. Everything has been done. I don't have much of anything else coming out. Because now you're going to hit that lull where everything stopped back in like around last March. So it's going to probably take a little bit of time, maybe like another good 6 months to get things started up again, to get some stuff under your belt to start coming out.
Mm. Well, I can't thank you enough for not only sitting with us, but most importantly for some of these great roles. I mean, I could nerd out on The Wire with you for 2 hours, and I won't put you through that. I mean, it's really, as one of the most intense shows, and with such an important message, I don't want it to get lost on just the sheet of it, but it really is. It's an iconic show, and a lot of these that you've played a part in, and the Five Bloods especially, they do have a reflection of what the world is going through now in a lot of ways, and just I just keep seeing these things get brought to the forefront, and then nothing happens. And one of the lessons I get out of the Five Bloods, aside from it's a great story and it's fun and there's a lot of laughs, but you don't realize like how much the African Americans were put on the front lines, and how they were such a large contribution to the army, and were promised all of these things, and just it never materialized. And I know the message is getting better, but that it's got to be more than just the message. And this is a very historic day that you joined us on too, because we have a new president and a lot of optimism, and the first African American vice president, the first female vice president. So there's a lot of optimism, but at the same time, I don't think it's enough. And that's a big message I got from the film. Spike just has a way of leaving you with that at the end, giving you that mindset.
The other thing is that, and this is just personal on my part, I went through a lot of trouble and worry that I was going to have to go to Vietnam and fight. I had a draft card and everything like that. A lot of my friends were going over to Vietnam when we graduated from high school. So I was very worried that, my number was going to come up and how I would deal with that. So to go to Vietnam and shoot this movie was very emotional for me, because I remember when the plane landed, I said to myself, they finally got you. They got you in Vietnam. You were going hell or high water.
Yeah.
But when I read the stories about some of the things that happened, and when we met with some of the GIs or expats over there, it was troubling. It was frightening. It was scary. And we had to try to make sure that we told that story and brought some of that to the film because the impact was that great. And that, to me, added to the film and the camaraderie and the closeness and everything like that. But some of the people I met and some of the stories I heard were just terrifying. And then when you would meet the people who, they were, to me, they were just very, very beautiful people. And the whole thing was just it was troubling and emotional. And it left a big imprint on me.
Yeah. My dad was in Vietnam, and there are no, he doesn't tell that many stories about it, and I don't prod him on it, because I have to imagine that no matter who was there, it's imagine being that young and being thrown into that, but more importantly, like, the lessons learned from this film and everything else, I hope what's happening carries on, and it's a great message just in general. And I just hope that this is the first day of a lot more optimism and things changing, because I kind of feel it, but I don't want to get my hopes up. You know how it goes.
Yeah, you might want to wait on that.
I know. I get you. But thank you so much again for joining us. You can follow his Twitter is great too. Isiah.
Yeah, I love your Twitter.
Yeah, Isiah Whitlock Jr. on Twitter. I strongly recommend you guys follow him. Check out The Five Bloods. Check out Your Honor. Check out I Care a Lot. And if you haven't watched The Wire, what is wrong with you? Go watch it. It's one of the greatest shows of all time.
And order a bobblehead.
Yeah, order a bobblehead.
And once again, 9E's, sheeeeeeeet.com. Get yourself a bobblehead. Isiah, if you could hang on just 1 second, I'm just going to wrap it up and I'll be right back.
Now, Lori, I just want to hear you say "she" one more time.
Let's go.
Hold on, let me get my nose ready.
You're on the spot. This is improv. Let's go.
Little nerves. Hold on. I don't think that was good at all. I need to practice when I'm alone, I think. I'm a little bit nervous in front of the master here.
It's okay, but you're on your way.
All right. Can you now try John? Let's go. You got to go to jail.
Come on, John. Come on, John.
All right. Isiah, hang on 1 second. Thank you for listening to The Whole. I am Ralph Sprans.
I'm Franco Del Valle.
I'm Lori Levine.
Motherfucker.